Cam Ward was absolutely slinging it on Miami's spring game on Saturday. Can Ward live up to the hype?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. I was at the Miami spring game on Saturday, Kenton, and obviously the slippery slope, whenever you praise someone at a spring game, they're going up against a teammate, okay? So obviously, if you could say Miami's first team offense, I thought outplayed the first team defense, someone can come back and say, well, what does that say about the defense? But Let me start with Cam Ward, who, obviously for everything he's done in 5 weeks of spring football, without actually having played a game in a Miami uniform, he's lived up to the expectation and the hype, in my opinion. I thought it really culminated with that spring game performance. ESPN credited him going 19 for 24 for 324 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. It's evident he's comfortable in Shannon Dawson's offense, and he's also, Kenton, evidently building chemistry. Xavier Restrepo, who was Miami's 1,000-yard receiver last year, had a really good performance. Isaiah Horton, who's expected to take on a bigger role as a 6'4" boundary receiver this year, had a good performance as well. There are definitely some questions about Miami's defense. Some guys were missing for the spring game. Others, I think, are additions they need to make in the transfer portal. But offensively, Cam Ward checked off pretty much every one of my boxes on Saturday.
So the thing I think is clear here is this. If Cam Ward can be this guy throughout the season and Miami can clean up some of those secondary issues, then Miami and Ward will be picking up a lot of awards at the end of the year. Like that is this, I have said all along that Cam Ward has the highest ceiling of every quarterback that transferred in. He has the highest ceiling of every quarterback on a roster right now in the ACC that I know of. That's just the facts of the matter. And so it's about the chemistry. It's about how well he meshes with the guys. It's about that ability to be on time and on target, and then add in that special sauce that makes it his sauce is separate from everybody else's. When he can do that, this Miami team is a force to be reckoned with. But like you said, there are those questions about what's going on with the DBs, what's going on in the running back room and all that. But again, Cam Ward looked phenomenal, to say the least, in terms of the spring game. And I'll say this. Some people say, oh, yeah, a lot of folks get tricked by the spring game. Don't be fooled. What I'll say is this. I can understand the idea of being fooled by spring games when you're playing against the twos, or even if you're playing against the ones and you just know your teammates. There were certain plays he made in this game, certain throws where it's like, you cannot fool people with that. Either you have the ability to make that specific pass or you don't. 85 to 90% of quarterbacks in college, depending on the year, don't have the ability to make that pass. He does. And so, Cam Ward, he looked special. He looked downright special there.
Yeah, and you talk about the special sauce, and for him, it's the ability to buy time in the pocket, the escapability, manipulating the pocket, improvising. We did see a little bit of that. You don't really want to see too much of that in a spring game because things are very vanilla, but we did see a couple of evidence of that. So, I think in the case of Miami, they're set at certain position units like offensive line. I would definitely say quarterback. I would say tight end based on the way they performed in spring. Linebacker for sure, they're set there. In fact, their top linebacker, Kiko Maui-Noa, didn't participate in spring, so that's going to get a boost when he comes back. They've already made a lot of additions on the defensive line, including former NC State defensive tackle C.J. Clark, who's been doing pretty well. I still think they could probably use more depth in the interior, because otherwise they're going to have to depend some on a couple of true freshmen who aren't even early enrollees, so they haven't been there yet. And then the defensive secondary is definitely a spot, Kenton. If they can get that stuff figured out through a combination of internal and external additions, then Miami can absolutely be competitive, come September and beyond. And I'm definitely looking forward to watching some of the remaining spring games that are coming up. Florida State has theirs coming up this Saturday. And I'll tell you, and there's actually a handful of ACC teams. Louisville's going to be on Friday night, who haven't played their spring game yet. The timing, Mr. Gibbs, is so weird. I mean, I would have much preferred to have already had my spring game out of the way, whether it be, 2 weekends ago or this past weekend, because the transfer portal is opening today. And so, basically, your own players who may be thinking about finding opportunities elsewhere either have to leave you high and dry on the week of your spring game, or they've got to maybe feel obligated to wait around for one more week and then maybe miss getting a jump start on the portal. So it's unideal timing. I kind of feel like, for the good of college football, everyone should have gotten their spring games out of the way before the transfer portal opens.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, and it's something that I definitely stand behind and agree with. I mean, I don't understand the portal being open at this point, but if it were the case, then these schools should have made more concerted efforts to have their spring games ahead of time, so that these players could get their tape out, get what they needed out, and all that good stuff, and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've done, check me out, see what's going on. Again, before the portal reopens, right? Not have a situation where it's like, oh man, the portal's open, and obviously you don't want to be last in, because the portal is more or less a game of musical chairs, but you're going to have to go in late if you want to have good film in certain regards. And how I'll say this. I know for a fact certain coaches and their staffs like to play the game of, hey, we can't give you your film until after spring is fully completed.
Right.
Which is another problem that's created by this, which, again, if everybody was just forced to say, hey, your spring football has to be from this window to this window, the portal opens the day after spring football is over, so that there can't be any, mix up, we'd love to, we just don't have the budget, and our staff isn't big enough, and everybody's working on a spring game right now. It puts everybody in a bad situation. It puts the teams in a worse situation. It puts the players in a worse situation. It puts their prospective new teams in a bad situation, because you can't see all the things that you would have otherwise.
Yeah, that's well said, because I remember months ago talking with the family of a player who was in the portal, and this isn't someone who had really any like game tape, like somebody who hadn't played, and so you're relying on trying to get things like spring game film from last year and practice film, and it's not always easy to get a hold of that, because coaches can be very hesitant to release practice film, because you need to know exactly what the context is, whose hands it's falling into, because obviously you don't want the stuff you're running behind closed doors in practice just getting blindly released. So it's difficult. Like if you're a player, because a lot of times, obviously, when we talk about the transfer portal, we tend to talk about the big name players who have started at other places, right? But the portal is also full of guys who are in the portal in the first place because they're not getting playing time where they're at, and that makes it even harder for them to convince other teams, hey, I can play for you. They're like, okay, where's the film? Well, I don't really have any. So it's really tough. And I was watching a little bit of Virginia Tech's spring game. I need to catch up on Pitt. I know Pitt played as well, and there were a couple of others on Saturday. But I'll say Virginia Tech, it looks like they are really heavy with quick and athletic running backs. A lot of the plays they were making, even in the passing game, was drones passing it off to running backs and them getting in space and making plays. It was tougher to tell how the defense played. And I know one of the things that I saw some Virginia Tech fans talking about was the need maybe for a backup quarterback in the transfer portal, because beyond their number one, they didn't feel like their other quarterbacks looked very good. But this is the season of upgrades, and it's also the season. This is something, Kenton, we didn't get to on Friday that we tabled for this Monday episode. On3 put out a ranking of all 17 now, including the 3 that are about to come in, ACC head football coaches heading into next year. They rank them 1 to 17. I also want to get on the latest report put out there, or theory on how conference realignment might go. have Clemson and Florida State, according to a channel that's been all over this stuff when it comes to conference realignment, college football addiction, have Clemson and Florida State put an ultimatum on the ACC, and could they get out sooner rather than later? You know what you want to do? We're not done yet. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, you want to have LinkedIn Jobs. If you're a small business and you're looking to hire, guys, this is the place to be. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It helps you find professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Hey, it's Locked On's NFL Mock Draft live on April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, streaming on the local Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. That's Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th at 7 Eastern Time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Alex Donno alongside Kenton Gibbs. All right, Kenton, we established last week top 10 college football coaches, regardless of conference. Two
Right.
ACC coaches made the cut, according to ESPN, and that was Dabo Swinney at number 4 and Mike Norvell at number 5. I've got a list in front of me of the 17, all 17 ranked in the ACC, according to On3 Sports. So, Kenton, they keep it consistent at the top, and I'm not going to argue it. They got Dabo Swinney at number 1 of Clemson. They've got Mike Norvell of Florida State at number 2. Do you agree with their number 3? He's definitely ascending. Is it too early after just one season to put Jeff Brom at Louisville? Of course, he accomplished some things at Purdue before he got there, but Jeff Brom at Louisville, number 3, or too soon?
The thing is, no other coaches in the ACC can say that they have the same type of accolades and are coming off the same type of year as him. So again, if this is projecting forward, I see the vision, because the only coaches who can say, hey, I have the same type of accolades, what did last year look like for their teams? Nowhere near as good as Louisville looked. So I can see it. There's a world where, depending on your criteria, or you're asking me to judge it, it comes out a little different, but I can understand him being at 3.
You know, and I didn't realize till I was reading this article that last year was the first time Louisville ever played in an ACC championship game.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that. So that's something else that Brom accomplished in his first season. They went 10-4 last year. That included an upset over Notre Dame. Dave Doran from NC State came in at number 4. I'm actually glad he's getting that respect there, Kenton, because I feel like Doran probably doesn't get talked about enough. He's the Wolfpack's all-time winningest head coach, which is definitely something to check. I would have thought for sure like Chuck Amato or something would have still held that, but for Doran, that's a nice accolade. And I think, again, NC State is definitely a team I'm going to be watching as a possible contender to get to the championship game this year.
Absolutely. Doran has bred consistency in that program. They need the spike year. For example, when I look at the Louisville and NC State game last year, right? If that one pass goes differently, where NC State is driving to start off the third quarter, they've already got a two-score lead, and instead of Brennan Armstrong making the read to throw a deep end against cover 1, instead he throws the slot fade, and it goes either out of bounds or for 6, we could be looking at such a different world right now for a ton of different reasons. But if ifs and buts were berries and nuts, squirrels would never starve, right? Like we live in the real world. And with that being said, we are where we are. Doran needs a spike year. He's raised the floor, but Chuck Amata has won double-digit games. Tom O'Brien, I believe, has a double-digit win season. You've got to get that double-digit win season. And if you are talking about raising the floor of the program, Doran's done that. Now you got to raise the roof. It's time to raise the roof on what the program is if you want to jump into that top 2 to 3 territory in ACC head coaching line.
Now, at number 5, when I first saw this, my reaction was like, really? They got Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. Now, maybe it's recency bias because Wake Forest was bad last year. They were 4-8 last year. I mean, prior to last year, Clawson had 7 straight seasons, 500 at least, taking his program to a bowl game. But then they lose Sam Hartman last year, and just everything went to hell for Wake Forest. So, am I overreacting to one bad year, or are they maybe grading him a little bit on the curve too much and saying, hey, look how much success, quote unquote, success he had at Wake Forest. We got to put this guy in the top 5. It still feels a little high for me.
They're grading him on a hard curve because even if we're talking about just projecting going forward, I don't know if any of our listeners know about Wake Forest transfer process. It is so arduous. Like he's in a very different situation from Dabo. Dabo just chooses not to use the portal. Wake Forest, the process for an undergraduate student transferring in is so rigorous, it's almost impossible to guarantee that a young man could transfer from one university over to Wake Forest in the amount of time that would not require them to miss time. So I understand grading on a little bit of a curve, saying it's different, but we're Americans. We don't care about the labor pains. We care about the beautiful bouncing baby. That's the reality of who we are. And as of late, if each win is a baby, it's been some real tough times to grow that family over at Wake Forest.
So they have Miami's Mario Cristobal then at number 6, and I'm perfectly fine with that. He's got to prove that that he belongs higher on that list, just in terms of meeting expectations and not having the boneheaded errors. I know a lot of people nationally will never forgive him for not taking that knee against Georgia Tech. So like the way that I look at it, I see from a roster standpoint what he's building at Miami. I've never covered recruiting like this, even not since Randy Shannon had a number 1 class at Miami back in 2008. Was the last time that I saw the type of recruiting that's happening now. So if you were just strictly grading on recruiting and roster building, he'd probably be in that top 3 with, Mike Norvell and maybe Dabo. But yeah, I totally get it that Miami's actually got to meet expectations this year. So I'll let you comment on that. But then also at number 7, making his ACC head coaching debut, they got Bill O'Brien at number 7. Is that too much too soon for him? Talk about benefit of the doubt.
I want to know what Bill O'Brien has done to you people to convince you that he's this good of a guy. I want to know it. In the words of Meatloaf, I want to know what the love is. I want you to show me. I want you to show me why y'all love him this way, because I don't get it. Now, back to Mario. I absolutely think that Mario is a good coach. But I think that both of these two are rated ahead of a guy that's accomplished a little bit more than them. That, granted, had a terrible year last year, and we'll get into him because I know he's coming up on this list. But it's hard for me to put Mario in this spot because, again, what's the criteria? Are we going off of going forward? Because if we're doing going forward, Clawson needs to slide down. If we're doing based off your history and what we expect from you, with all due respect, Cristobal's history is not an immaculate one where you're like, hey, a championship is coming one of these days. Trust it. Just trust it. Just stick with it. So, but again, Bill O'Brien, what has he done? What has he shown y'all as a college head coach to make you believe it? What does he show you as an NFL head coach to make you believe this?
Yeah, I think he did win a couple division titles in the NFL, but
you won a couple division titles with the best quarterback and receiver tandem in that franchise's history by a mile. By a mile. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Well, let me go through all the rest of these and we can comment. Otherwise, if we keep going one by one, we'll be here all day. They actually got, because I'm not sure who you were referring to that was, we'll get to it, I'm sure, but I don't think this was the one you're referring to. They got Rhett Lashley at number 8 of SMU.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Mac Brown at UNC at number 9, Pat Narduzzi at Pitt at number 10, Brent Key at Georgia Tech, number 11, Brent Pry at Virginia Tech at number 12, Manny Diaz at Duke at 13, Justin Wilcox of Cal at 14, Troy Taylor of Stanford at 15, Tony Elliott at Virginia, and they got Mr. Irrelevant here. I guess he gets no first-year benefit of the doubt at all. That's Fran Brown from Syracuse. No. I mean, it's like, but Bill O'Brien, Rockets near the top of the list. Fran Brown, you got to earn it, buddy.
My only one that I would say was too low, and I alluded to him a little bit before, is Pat Narduzzi.
That's what I thought you were, yeah.
Last Coastal coach to ever win an ACC championship.
So how about this? So they completely give Clawson a flyer for last year, but they don't give Narduzzi a flyer for last year.
And that's my thing. I'm not upset at saying, hey, Clawson had a terrible year, knock him down the ranks. And Narduzzi had a terrible year, knocking down the ranks. Or, hey, last year we give both of them a flyer. They've done a good job. I understand. You can't go with one of them, hey, he gets a pass and this one doesn't. Nah, stop. Yeah. Again, would I lie and say that Narduzzi did not do an abysmal job last year? Absolutely not. Would I lie and say his recruiting has been up to par? Absolutely not. But what I will also say is, at the end of the day, last Coastal head coach to ever win an ACC championship, and then moving forward from there, when I look at how low some of these coaches have gone or how high or low they are, I don't see consistency. I don't see consistency in terms of, are we looking going forward? Are we looking at full body of work till now? Are we saying if all things were even and you put all of these coaches at completely even teams, who do I think would come out the winner, X's and O's and recruiting wise? Because those are all very different tales than, this is the coach whose team I think is the best. So I would like to know their criteria for ranking these. But again, I think they got it right for the most part. If they're saying, what do I know right now based on your body of work, outside of Narduzzi, of course, because that one is just god awful. And of course, Mac Brown, again, if you're going by body of work, Mac Brown has a body of work that's up there with anybody. But if you're going by future, then of course, Mac Brown is running a very soft program over there in Chapel Hill. So, that's just the reality of what it is. But yeah, all in all, I look at this and I say, it's not the worst list in the world, but I need some consistency. I need to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's weird. Like they totally gave Clawson a pass for last year, and Narduzzi, who 2 years ago wins the ACC, no pass. Here's what they wrote about Narduzzi. After a mini renaissance in 2011 and 2021 and 2022, that was 20 wins and an ACC championship. Narduzzi's stock is trending in the wrong direction following a 3-9 season, the program's worst in 25 years. Narduzzi wasn't even considered for the Michigan State opening this offseason, and the former longtime Spartans DC has totally whiffed on multiple quarterbacks and OC decisions. I guess for as poor as he's been with OCs, he's been very good with DCs and defensive coaches. Narduzzi isn't exactly on the hot seat entering the 2024 season, but there's an impetus to show improved results following last season's terrible backslide. But again, I'm not saying any of that's not true, but it's like they hold that against Narduzzi 3-9, but they don't hold 4-8 against Clawson. But when we come back, Kenton, listen, man, I've got an open mind to some of this stuff, but you're usually the guy who brings me back down to earth.
Well, listen, I'm going to open my mind with you because apparently I'm too close-minded according to the comments. So after you get back from break, we're going to see whether or not the fans like open-minded, Ken.
More evidence. Florida State, according to a report, Florida State and Clemson could very well both be out of the ACC, which I think is going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen by June 30th, which is what this report claims. Keep it locked right here. And my friends, you always want to be keeping it locked to FanDuel. I'm having so much fun. I did well on my UFC 300 bets last night. I'm looking to keep that rolling as we gear towards the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's so much going on. Yeah, it's playoff time, and baseball's in full swing. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Alex Donno from Locked On Canes, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. And I want to make an important distinction here, Kent. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but just based on some of the YouTube comments we've received recently, just so people know, we don't work for the ACC. We cover the ACC.
What?
We don't get checks from Jim Phillips or anything like that. We cover the conference. We don't work for the conference. And honestly, folks, I have an open mind. Like if the ACC were to, crumble, I've got other jobs. I've got other opportunities. Kenton does as well. We have other stuff we do on this network. If Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC, our jobs and our lives will go on. Just wanted to get that out of the way. So I've definitely been following his channel as of late, College Football Addiction, who talks pretty much daily about the legal fights between the ACC, Florida State, Clemson, and where this is all heading. And he says from a media source of his that the ACC has been given an ultimatum by Florida State and Clemson that the ACC needs to settle with them, like their exit agreement from the ACC needs to settle with them by or before June 30th. Now, I think the idea here is the ACC settles with them with the agreement that, we're going to let you leave just after June 30th, but we're going to settle the terms with you. And if they don't settle that by June 30th, Clemson and Florida State will leave the conference on June 30th. And thus ESPN can then trigger that composition clause where they can, if the ACC gets below, below 14 teams before July 1st, because July 1st is when SMU, Stanford, and Cal arrive, which would bring the number back up. If the ACC goes below a threshold of teams by June 30th, ESPN can throw out the TV deal and put the entire conference in jeopardy. So the idea is, hey, settle with us now, and we won't leave before that date. We keep the conference alive at least for a couple more years. He cited reasons why in his words, like Clemson and Florida State could leave by June 30th, being that based on the allegations out there, the ACC has violated their own bylaws by not holding a vote, like a full conference vote for that lawsuit, which is alleged again that they didn't do that. And that, one of the rulings from the judge in North Carolina did say that Florida State does not owe a fiduciary duty to the conference after they leave, which would make it, I guess, less punitive for them to walk away. So I guess that according to that line of logic, they could just decide to leave by June 3rd. I'm just wondering, I want to understand how, when there are all these court cases actively going on, which are not going to be settled by June 30th, why they're even doing this if on June 30th, they're just going to say, peace, we're out, give us our settlement. I'm open to the idea of it. There's a couple of bridges. And listen, if I'm leaving out something obvious, make me understand, because I don't understand how by June 30th, they're just going to be able to walk away.
Don't worry, Donno. I have evidence as well. Oh, no, wait, this is the wrong thing. I'm sorry. That was my check from the ACC for 95. I my bad.
You outed yourself.
I do not get paid by the ACC, as Donno said. Ignore that check that you all just saw. That's not important. But what I seriously am interested to know the same question. Like I said, I'm going to try to be more open-minded because the fans are very upset with me for not being more open-minded and receptive to the possibility that I could be wrong. So I'm going to accept the possibility that I could be wrong. And as a matter of fact, Donno, I'm going to challenge myself to not even speak as if I am right at all and that this theory is completely correct. Okay.
Wow.
So with that in mind, I need you all to help me out in the comments, okay? Like Donald has already said, if this person is correct, and they are just going to say, hey, we're taking our ball, we're going home, we're not playing anymore on June 30th, why are we still in the courts? I need somebody to explain that to me, because I'm a little confused as to if I'm told, if I was in a contract with a job, right, and that job says, hey, you have a non-compete, Kenton. You cannot go to anybody in our sector because you have worked here, right? And then we go to court and the judge says, well, actually, there's no punitive damages if you decide to leave. You can go wherever you want. You can work for whatever competitor you want, so on and so forth. And I am apparently the best technical recruiter there has ever been. Everybody's lining up and strapping and clawing and fighting for my services. Why would I not leave? I need help understanding. I'm asking for genuine understanding what's going on in the courts. If all of these facts do exist, where it's like, hey, Florida State owes nothing if they leave. And why would Florida State stay is my biggest question. Why are they staying? Why are you staying and arguing when you could just leave and take your stuff with you and not owe anything on the back? And I'm very confused by this all, because again, my mind is being opened, so I want somebody to help me.
Well, I guess like the idea would be like the ACC would have to figure this is not going to end well for us, so maybe we follow their ultimatum, we let them out now. But then again, like, it doesn't really explain the June 30th. Like, I understand what happens on June 30th. Like, June 30th is the last day before Stanford, SMU, and Cal arrive. But I just don't know how Florida State and Clemson could be that confident that they can just walk away before that date. So if this is really what's happening, it's definitely a game of chicken. Like, he on his show, he compared it to like two countries having their nukes pointed at each other, like a standoff. Like, which, maybe it's the wrong time to bring up that analogy given the state of the world today, but that's what he did bring up right now.
I'll tell you, we are facing a college football total sum of annihilation here if things do set off in the way that they've been. Because again, I'm pretending that I do not understand anything about the law. Mm-hmm. I have taken no classes in law school, so I'm going to accept that everyone is right and that it's not illegal for ESPN to strong-arm two teams into going into a specific conference.
I think that was a separate theory, to be fair. I don't think that theory is related to this one, but that theory was, yeah.
And here's where I'm going with this, okay? Assuming that I know nothing about any of the legalese of any of this, right? I am still at a point of, again, being open-minded. I'm trying to fully wrap my head around the idea that these court cases that were supposed to take years will now be wrapped up in 5 months. Because, I mean, hypothetically, would it not be like hey, we're not going to play any games under the ACC's umbrella because we don't owe you all any money? Okay, great. Well, we're just going to order for a restraining order on you all doing that, so you have to play under us or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. But, hey, people in the world are smarter than me. There are plenty of folks in the world that are much smarter than me. I just would like for them to explain to me how this is going to work. And if this works out already, then why are we still in court right now? Those are the two things I want to explain. If you already know, I want to know what changes between now and June 30th that makes you hold on and not say right now, hey, actually, we don't have to have any secondhand reports that Florida State and Clemson that played their last game in the ACC. We're going to go firsthand from our mouths as the Seminoles. We will no longer play in the ACC. As of April 15th, 2024, we will never play another game in the ACC as it is assembled today. Thank you all for coming to our TED Talk. Bye. I'll
definitely be keeping up with, I think, the next important court date. I'm not sure when the next North Carolina date is, but April 22nd, I think, is the next hearing in Florida with Florida State. So we'll be covering that for sure. We'll keep our eyes on that. Huge shout out and thank you to Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. Make sure you follow him at TGIF_Kenton. I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Follow me at Alex Donno, and we will talk to you guys again next time, right here, wherever you get your podcasts, on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.